it. Click it. Click it. We're live.
We're
We're
live.
live. We did it. We did it. Yay.
We clicked
I'm
it.
excited. We clicked it. We clicked it. We did the live thing.
Yes,
we
we
did the live thing. Well, hello, Emily. Welcome to Teach Gen Tech and also content. Teach Gen content, but
Yeah.
that's what we should call this one.
I'm
Business, Teach Gen business. There's quite a few that we could be calling this one.
I love it. I'm really excited to be here.
What would you call it? Would you call it, if you're teaching people this kind of stuff, would you call it, what would we be learning about today?
What would I be learning about today? I think a myriad of topics we will probably cover, including probably a little bit of developer relations, because that's both what we focus on, a little bit of influencer and, thought leadership, how to create content and get paid for it, and maybe like a little bit of fun.
Yay. Yeah. Awesome. And to start, who are you, Emily?
Who are you?
What are you?
Who are you?
Tell us about Emily.
Yes, I'm Emily Freeman. Here, I'll do my official intro and then I'll be me. I'm Emily Freeman. I'm the author of DevOps for Dummies and the co-author of 97 Things Every Cloud Engineer Should Know. I left Amazon as their head of community in December, started my own thing with Forrest Brazil called Freeman Forrest. It's an influencer marketing agency. And prior to Amazon, I was at Microsoft. So I have a tech career sprinkled with massive cloud companies.
Nice. And what up, Jay and Stuart? Thank you for, yay, so many more people. Okay, guys, I'm glad more and more people are joining. We are going to be working on, AKA me, paying attention to all the chats because we are streaming across 4 platforms.
That's a lot.
It is a lot, but I was like,
I'm not nervous. It's fine.
It's Emily, so of course we had to, like make sure people could actually see it and ask questions.
Amazing.
And please don't mind my dogs in the background. They are trapped in the room with me.
Wait, why are they trapped in the room? I feel like there's a story there, Jen.
My partner is traveling right now, and he's normally home. He's like the one that like handles the dogs while at work. And he is in Denver right now, actually, for work. And so I need to keep them with me without destroying the house. So
That's
they are, I like the nitpicking. Let's see if my mic is set to the right one. Great call. No, it is not. Thank you for that, Jay. Let's see why is my mic not working?
Handy.
My mic is just gone. That's cool. Why mic? Why? Oh, probably because I moved you.
Because technology was a mistake, Jen. Like, what are we doing?
Because technology. That is what happened. In case anybody wanted to know, technology is sometimes our friend. Oh, do we got it? We got it.
When it works, it works. When it doesn't, it doesn't.
Is it better audio?
Oh, that's sweet audio. God damn.
Yay, we got the video.
Oh my god, that's really, I was like, oh, now we're on the radio. Like, this is
we got the official mic. Maddie is really cool, Mike.
Can you teach me your ways when we get off? Because I need hi, Tim. I need a better. I mean, we can assess my audio too. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm terrible at this, but
I feel like that could be something we talk about later on. And y'all, we had a lot of questions for this, so this might be like a more than one part series because there are so many questions. But one thing that we got the official recap of who you are, but what is the not turn on the ad version of Emily?
I love that. Who is Emily? I mean, first and foremost, I'm a mom. I think a lot about let me remind. There was a obituary I read recently. I forget who it was about, but it was all about their like career and their contributions to tech. And it's not that wasn't valuable, but I was just overwhelmed with like that is not what I want my funeral to be about. Like, let this be the least interesting thing about me. So yeah, like, I mean, my daughter Clara is the most important thing to me in the world. I value friendship and human connection above everything else. And tech has been an incredible medium through which I was able to make more and more of those connections. And, I feel like I've been a part of so many incredible communities. But yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I'm just like a person who's doing their best and sometimes stumbling through life. I feel like we're all stumbling through life.
I would agree with that. There are many times where I'm going, Emily, what am I doing?
I know.
And like info dump. That has been a big part of our calls.
Yes.
Well, thank you for sharing a bit about who you are. Who and what, I guess, what is Freeman Forrest, but it's a name. So I want to say, who is Freeman Forrest?
I know. Okay, so I'll go into the company and then I also go into the name because the name is so funny. And how people react to it. So to step all the way back, I left Amazon in December and I was toast, like completely burnt out. And we can talk about burnout. That's its own separate kind of topic that I now am an expert in. But I thought like January, okay, I'm going to take this break. I'm going to write. I'm going to do all this stuff. You were a firsthand witness to these goals and ambitions. And then my immune system and body and soul just were like, no, dog. Like we're not going to be doing any of that, Emily. We're done. And so I spent like 5 months just basically doing nothing. I mean, completely resting. I mean, I definitely filled it with activity because I don't know how to sit still. And that's a whole other thing around like, how do you actually sit still in our society? It's really hard. We're expected to constantly be moving, constantly be doing things, constantly achieving. And when you're not doing anything, it's like, who are you? What is your value? Like, these are the questions I was kind of going through. But in that time, Forrest Brazil was at Google, kind of like in similar role as I was at Amazon. And he left and we were talking about starting a podcast, which we might do at some point also. But we were both sort of like helping a few companies with various things. And Forrest is like, I think I have an idea for a company. I'm like, okay, what is it? And so he pitches this influencer marketing agency. I'm like, okay, you think people would pay for that? Like, I mean, it's like Forrest founded a company with Chicken Little. I'm just like, I don't know, would they? And it turns out they do. I mean, this is a huge problem. And I should have known better because, I've worked at companies who needed to hire various content creators, influencers, thought leaders, however you want to describe them, in the industry to write content, to actually, speak on products or highlight products within their various assets. An asset would be like a social platform, a newsletter, a podcast, etc., a stream. And so yeah, we got started and it's been a rocket ship. I have to say, I am completely humbled, blown away, shocked, overjoyed, mildly panicking about how much work we've gotten. So at its basic, Freeman Forrest is an influencer marketing agency. We connect businesses with content creators in tech.
Very cool. And part of one of the biggest reasons part of what Emily and I talk about during our calls is, hey, learn how to do DevRel things, different ways of doing things, and the ADHD overwhelm that will happen. And I'll go, hey, I need to do this. And there's like so many ways of doing this. And I don't even know what? And one thing that Emily has mentioned of like how to start breaking down concepts, and y'all are gonna make fun of me for this, but learn with Jason, because I always mess up Jason's last name. So
Langsdorff.
Yeah, I'm always like, it's Jason. Learn with Jason.
Jason L. There you go.
Jason L.
Like kindergarten.
And see, again, I don't even remember what the phrase is, because I think water buffalo, but that is also not the phrase of.
I love your brain so much.
Because he has this thing of how you like break down content and repurpose it multiple times.
Okay.
And I call it, again, it's Learn with Jason Water Buffalo. And thank you, Anthony, for saying that it's the buffalo stick, not the water buffalo.
Got it. Okay. Sorry, not sorry, Jason. That's amazing. And this will be the forever use the whole water buffalo stick.
Mm-hmm. But like that's been in my head for so long. And a lot of times for myself, if I'm working on my own content, it's harder. I get really, really stuck on how do you do that? And Emily's been talking about like Freeman and Forrest and learning something that we got started with when we first started talking was how to do tech talks.
Yeah.
And taking notes on doing that. And I was like, yo, could I ask you all these questions on stream and work on making them into TikToks and maybe a blog, or see if we can do some water buffalo sticks?
And look at us now achieving.
So yeah. And yes, I'm going back to a few of the questions because I'm seeing them come in from all the different platforms.
Oh, let me talk about the name because I failed to do that.
Yes.
It sounds, I think most people hear Freeman and Forrest, which by the way, I had to buy forrestandfreeman.com too, because we have both messed up the order of this so many times. But Freeman and Forrest, it sounds like a lawyer, a law firm, an accounting firm. And that's sort of on purpose, right? Because one, this shouldn't be the most exciting part of the process, right? Our job is to make connections and to make sure that the content creators can really shine and that our customers' products shine. We should be the least interesting thing about this process. And we're staking our reputations on this, right? I feel so strongly about doing this right and making sure that everyone wins that I'm putting my name on it. I don't want any customer to think that I'm taking this lightly or doing the bare minimum. Like my whole reputation is on this, and I'm going to do the very best job I can to represent their brand and protect their brand, while also connecting the dots and making sure that the community gets the best possible content.
I like that. And also, because I'm very stuck on this, how did you come up with Freeman and Forrest? Because it's your last name and Forrest's first name. And I don't know why I found that so funny from the beginning.
Both Forrest and I prefer alliteration over consistency. So it was like, great, F and F, that's awesome, ship it. I think we thought about doing our first names, but then honestly it sounds like a wedding. It's like Forrest and Emily, like it's like, that is kind of more funny because Forrest's wife's name is actually Emily. But yeah, we go for alliteration above anything else. I love alliteration.
That's awesome. Yeah. AJC Web Dev that's in the chat is one of the first people that was ever on the live stream. Mm-hmm. And his then girlfriend, then fiance, now wife, her name is Jen.
Yes.
So like the very first stream was like, this is Jen, not my girlfriend Jen.
Exactly. Different Jen.
Different Jen. And thank you for that. I think something that a lot of people because the really cool thing about, at least with that I've seen with my channel, as well as a lot of the people that follow both you and I, is we have two different markets of people that follow us. Okay, there's probably very many more, but the two to focus on is like the business decision makers and then the content creators. And a question that comes to mind is, why would businesses reach out to influencers or content creators? Why not make it in-house? Why is this like a thing to even try to find influencers?
I love this question, and it's so multi-layered. So I will go in no particular order. One of the challenges I faced both at Microsoft and at Amazon was trying to reach people who were not already bought into the company, right? It's easy to maintain relationships. Now, companies still mess it up, but generally speaking, it's a much smaller lift to maintain the relationships with people who are already bought into your product, already fans, already show up at your first party events, meaning the reinvents, the builds, that type of company sponsored conference, than it is to reach new people. In part because you have to go where they are, right? These people are not bought into your properties or your content. So they're not coming, to Amazon.com. Well, they're going, but not for AWS. And so none of us can escape Amazon. And now they bought my grocery store and I'm just really upset about it, but it's fine. That's a whole other topic. So you have to kind of reach out to people who are in different communities, and how they access information is completely unique based on where they're at. So they're consuming newsletters. They're obviously on typically a social media network. That's Twitter. I refuse to call it X. That's LinkedIn. They're also listening to podcasts. They're, watching streams. They're watching videos on YouTube. When I have to learn something new, YouTube is where I go. I love learning from people teaching me and talking to me. So video is what works really well for me for that. But when you're at these companies, a lot of times they have developer relations teams. And that's so important, right? Like, we are not replacing developer relations. I want to be super clear about that. I've gotten on calls with folks and there was like a very defensive vibe. And like, I'm not coming. I have spent a decade plus building developer relations into, I hope, a better place than it was when I started. I am not looking to end this specialty, but it's an addendum, right? When you're working in developer relations, Jen, you know this, you are the front line as far as the deepest knowledge on your specific products, understanding where it fits in the market, understanding why customers would use it for a specific reason, connecting those dots, but reaching out beyond our sort of, I call it the solar system, right? Like, if within my reach, I have a large bubble, but there is an edge to that bubble. I cannot go beyond that bubble, right? And I think we all have that. And it's about accelerating our content and reaching new folks. And you need those types of external influencers to do that, I think.
You brought up a great sub question of what is the difference between developer relations versus influencers? Because if it's not to replace developer advocates, which there's the complexity of that means something different to so many different companies and so many different roles. But like, what would you say the biggest difference between developer relations and influencers are?
Yeah. And just to acknowledge, there's definitely a Venn diagram, right? Like Kamala Harris, I love a Venn diagram. And I think you have to look at, there's definitely an overlap. And I would say the biggest difference is that anchoring of your day-to-day job. When I was at Microsoft, I focused mostly on Azure DevOps and infrastructure as code, and really kind of highlighting what people needed and how they could utilize Azure for that purpose. But I had never used Azure DevOps outside of my employment at Microsoft. And I would say that is relatively common if you're in developer relations. You get a role. It's not always, right? Sometimes people are really passionate about a product and end up at that company. But for me, I was hired to do a role, and then I sort of learned the product and went from there. Obviously, there's a skill set before that, and you have to be able to connect with people. I did indeed work on ADO. And so, you have to have a sort of understanding of how people would actually utilize this without that connection back to the company branding, right? Anytime you work at a company, there are limits to what you can actually say within your employment, right? And I think part of the friction with developer relations that I've experienced and where we have lost power in this market is it used to be that developer relations had enough power in organizations to really push back on leadership and product and say, no, this is what we need to say, or no, this is going to hurt you in the community. And there was just so much, I felt a lot more power and capacity to protect communities than I did when I eventually left in December. And I think, we're all fighting the good fight, and I had a lot of privilege to be able to leave. But I think right now there's a friction and a tension there that we're just kind of figuring out. And so that's part of it, right? Like you do have limitations when you're in developer relations. For me, the primary difference is when you are working in DevRel, you are going to be so focused on that product, going to be the technical expert in that product. And then you want to expand beyond your reach and the reach of your team. I mean, you look at folks, once you've kind of bought in on a product, you're going to, again, hit the edges of your audience pretty quickly, right? And so what the external influencers are able to do is actually promote the content that developer relations teams are doing, and extend that sort of feedback loop, extend that reach, so that you're connecting with developers and technical audiences way beyond the bubbles of each individual advocate. Does that make sense?
It does. And if I give it the very, very, I'll say the very basics of the recap, what comes to mind is developer relations. And when they're working for a company is, for example, they're going to show how you make content work for that product, where an influencer will say, hey, this is how you make this product work with a completely different product, and how they may work well together, or how they work well in the ecosystem.
Yes, definitely. And you just have different perspectives, right? Even in this role, I am more energized about tech than I have been in 5 years, because I know more about what's going on in the broader industry than I did when I was in the sort of silos of both Microsoft and Amazon, right? Those companies are so large that it's very difficult to see beyond when you're in it. And now it's like I get to hear from startups and what they're doing. Some AI is nonsense, but there's some really cool stuff going on as well. I just feel so excited about what is actually taking place, and hearing from, different companies working on things. It's kind of great. Like, I feel very energized about our industry right now.
Yay.
Yeah.
That's always good to hear, because I feel like it can be, sometimes we get stuck in the loop of things can be so negative. So I like hearing the positive side of things. How do you, it sounds like you've had a huge lift in companies reaching out to you going like, this is the coolest shit ever, let's go.
Yeah.
How do you find influencers, and then how do you decide to match them?
Yes. Okay. So that is the sort of magic. We are very focused on connecting companies with audiences and communities aligned to their niche, their technical focus, their use case. And so we focus on high impact, high value impressions. By that, I mean, people, like, we want to make placements where the audience is actually going to be interested in this product, use this product, or purchase this product, depending on where they are in the, buying power. You can get higher reach and higher impressions by just blanketing a bunch of different podcasts, newsletters. There are some very large newsletters out there that have big numbers, but we have found are actually 0 calorie impressions. They don't actually do anything for the company. And so we really work on focusing between, okay, this is in not only this area of tech. I've been picking on artificial intelligence. I'll pick on DevOps or platform engineering. But then we go and find influencers who are not only experts in that area, because the best content creators, the best influencers are simply just subject matter experts, who also, learn in public and speak about what they're learning and write content or create content in some way. And so we reach out to folks within that skill set who are experts and who have the right sort of audience for that. Obviously, size is important to some degree, right? You have to be able to reach a particular number of people before it's really worth sponsoring. But we work with some pretty tiny newsletters that just have really engaged audiences. And that's how we really connect from there. So we're not just blanketing. We don't take placements and then just, put them wherever. We really think about, okay, who is the best influencer for this? We reach out to that influencer. Do you feel comfortable with this? We have a newsletter I love placing with, Diversify Tech, is, really one of their boundaries and one of their, criteria is that they vet every company for what they believe to be ethical and responsible employment and work. And so I send that ahead of time. Is this a company you're comfortable with? It is. We ship it. If it's not, we don't. And so that's really special too, right? Because it's not this like faceless ad campaign. It's really kind of engaging with the community, with content creators, and doing this in a really ethical and responsible way that I hope brings more value to the community in a larger context.
Thank you. You're great at leading into other questions.
Thank you.
I think that's like a superpower because you've done it so many times. You mentioned earlier that possibly doing like a lot of ads or just going on a ton of different like platforms and trying to get awareness there, brand awareness there. You mentioned the term like 0 calorie.
Mm-hmm.
And from my understanding, that means that it's something that doesn't have a lot of value. It could take time. It may be high cost and time, or one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
How do you measure calories?
I love this. It depends on the campaign, right? So when we meet with a new, customer or potential client, we go over what they actually want to get out of it. Typically, there are 3 styles of engagement. One is just an awareness campaign, a brand lift. You are getting folks.
Time out really, really quick.
Yeah.
Campaign. Because that term, when I think of it, I'm like, D&D, let's go, or Diablo, or video games.
Oh, it's like we're on a march. We're doing things.
But in marketing, a lot of times campaign means it's a strategy specifically for an item. Mm-hmm. So like you were mentioning about brand awareness. So they may name a campaign, Freeman Forrest 2025. And that can be a campaign that is a year long. Mm-hmm. That meaning that they're going to be tracking numbers within that year for under that campaign. And there can be sub campaigns like breaking it out per quarter or per project, or campaigns is a very complex thing by itself. But
that's true.
Hopefully that gives you a very brief synopsis of what campaigns are. Please continue.
Yes. I would say in our context, a campaign is a focused use of resources to achieve an outcome within a time frame. And so, with influencer marketing, and I wrote a white paper that kind of has a layout of what a whole marketing strategy would look like and where we kind of fit into that placement. But yeah, to your point, like a campaign is really around what are we trying to achieve? When are we trying to achieve it? And then also, there's this element of how many resources are we going to put behind that? And that's both actual money, but also resources as far as, these influencer campaigns, if you do them in-house, often require at least one full-time employee. That's a huge ask right now in this market. And so going back to campaigns, when we're talking about, the awareness campaign, that brand lift, these are typically companies that are relatively new. They have that sort of like fit. They understand where they are in the market, and they need to then just reach more people. This also includes companies, like awesome companies that are just outside the US market and want to reach an American audience. So we work with some incredible European companies, companies in Latin America and beyond, where they're just really focused on how can we reach developers within the US, and we make placements from there. There's also an engagement campaign. This is the least sort of popular right now. I've seen it be more popular in the past, and I think it's a reflection of just where we are in the, what do they call it? Macroeconomic conditions. And so I was so tired of hearing that phrase. I was like, stop it, just call it what it is. But I think when you're talking about an engagement campaign, it's really getting folks to engage in your content. These are the likes, the reposts, the comments, the reshares. That is what's really going to get people just engaged with your brand and buying into that trust, right? I think when you're looking at, there's all sorts of sales funnels and things like that. You'll hear the word funnel forever. It's really about how do you take a big audience and really get to a purchase, essentially. But I think something that always gets missed with companies is that trust element. You have to know a company exists and be aware of it. But then before you buy, but also before you take advice from them, at least for me, I want to trust not only that they're real, that they're experts in what they're talking about, that they're consistent, that they're going to stick around. There has to be that level of trust. And I think that's where an engagement campaign really plays. You're just getting folks to be aware of you and maybe to follow your accounts or come more often to your blog, developer center, or whatever. And then there is the most popular campaign right now, again, I think because of just where we are in the market, is around how do you drive to eventually a sales goal. And that's really around click-through. So I, at Freeman Forrest, cannot guarantee a purchase because that occurs on a property that I have no control over. But what I can do is make placements in assets. And when I say an asset, I really mean an influencer's podcast, newsletter, wherever they go, because it's a many-to-many relationship, right? Most influencers have many assets, and most assets have many influencers. And so when you're placing in that area, I'm not going to, for a campaign where they really want to focus on a click-through rate or a CTR, you're not going to place typically in a podcast because you can't immediately click, right? People then have to go. They leave my chain of tracking. Those placements happen in newsletters. It happens on LinkedIn. Those are by far and away the most successful for that type of campaign. People hear about it, they see it, they're interested, they click. And at that point, there's a handoff between the influencer and Freeman Forrest to the company, where I have to trust, that company then, creates that right type of content and continues that train of thought for the customer.
Jay brings up a good point of, but what about the AI campaign?
Great question. AI, I have so many complicated feelings about AI right now. And so I think AI in general is super exciting. When you actually dive into everything, it's kind of amazing. Like, this is a totally different way of computing information. Like if you step all the way back, I think we talk a lot about LLMs and generative AI, but if you move backward and just look at transformers and how that has shifted deep learning and all these types of machine learning approaches, it's really, really exciting. These are genius level humans that created a completely different way of doing something. And now we're trying to figure out how to actually apply that. And the first kind of way they were able to do this is these large language models, or LLMs. But the LLMs are somewhat limited right now in their ability to actually change our day-to-day life. And I know some people will argue with me, and that's okay. ChatGPT and all these chatbots, because they're all chatbots. It's great, like, right? Like it's interesting. We're excited about this, but I'm also not seeing a huge difference in the day-to-day life of a developer yet, with the exception of those code sidekicks, the co-pilots, etc. Those are obviously a really, really big deal and accelerate the work of developers in ways I don't even think we have fully come to appreciate. But I think I view artificial intelligence more as just another abstraction. We're again continuing to move ourselves up the stack. That doesn't mean you can't dive back in. That doesn't mean you can't, leave the abstraction and go do things manually. I think that is really important, having those escape hatches so you don't hit some kind of abstraction wall. But I think AI for me right now, we're still trying to figure out how to actually apply it. And a lot of the hype isn't from people who are genuinely engaged in this and looking in the long term, right? I think the hype really comes from people who are trying to make a quick buck. A lot of that content, that kind of, a lot of the noise in the echo chamber is coming from people who are really focused on sales. Like right now, when I was stepping back and learning about AI, there were two levels of content. One is the incredibly jargon heavy sales pitch, essentially. Very little information, talks a lot about AI like it's magic. And then there's the academic, essentially math papers. And there's not a lot in between, right? And I think we're starting to build that out now. But to your point, there's a ton of hype around AI. There's some really exciting AI companies that we've been able to work with. There's also a lot of AI companies that I wouldn't view as genuine. They're wrappers around other tools and other models, created by these massive companies. Not everyone can have an LLM. To do that is an incredibly expensive project. And so, I'm much more interested in the products right now that can drive change in developers' lives, and that is affordable and responsible. What's the purpose of having AI if it burns down the planet in the next decade?
Thank you for that. And Jay, you are coming up with a lot more good questions, but I'm gonna put a pin in that one, because I do want to spend a bit of time to focus on the content creators. And I think that Rachel asked a really good question on this, because as like a segue of the two, of do they consider this a two-sided market? If so, how are they approaching outreach and both content creators and businesses, they being you? Because how do you, adding to this question, and something that you mentioned earlier, is you want to see influencers grow as well, and their audience grow. So how is it possible to do both at the same time and be able to support both?
Yes. This is probably the hardest part of the company. So it is absolutely to what is the phrase? Two-part market?
Two-sided market is the
Two-sided
phrase they
market. Thank
use.
you. And so to explain that, like Netflix exists in a two-sided market, right? They make deals with the studios that make media. They put it on the platform and then they sell that to the customer. That's on the other side of the market. A one-sided market would be like, I sell concealer to direct to consumer. So absolutely, we both negotiate with our customers and our clients and tailor those influencer campaigns to their specific needs. There's some default options that we have that are just, we have ready to execute. There's also custom proposals where they need something very specific. There's companies that don't care about clicks. They really need custom content created because they don't have the same kind of developer relations resources internally. Some companies got rid of all their developer relations and now they're in a lurch. And so, making sure we can customize to our clients is really important. We negotiate, obviously, what we provide them and the cost associated with that. On the influencer side, we do the same thing, right? Not all influencers are created equal right now. If you freeze time, I think everyone can grow and create a really interesting, market for themselves, but not everyone's at the same stage. There's people who, one newsletter reaches 1 million people. They're going to command a much higher price than someone who reaches, 6,000 people. And so we do the same on the influencer side. Also around, like I was saying earlier, are you comfortable with this? Does this company align with you? Do you feel like you can actually speak to this? Do you feel that the company and the product is valuable? We ensure that our clients get our influencers' attention, not their opinion, right? We're not just selling good opinions. And so I want to check in with influencers. Like, do you feel like this aligns to you, your brand, your audience, your values? That's really, really important. And then we talk about, how we can make those placements and the price there as well. Forrest and I feel really like our commitment to the community and our responsibility is really important to both of us. And so on both sides, we do our best to be, responsible, somewhat stewards of this. My greatest goal is to grow a bunch of content creators. Like if we are able to get folks who are currently working on the weekends or, creating, a lot of these influencers just haven't taken sponsorships, right? Yet. So they're working on the weekends for free to create content we all use and value and need. And being able to pay them for their time makes me feel so good. And we want to eventually be able to say that we pay influencers millions of dollars a year to create this content. That would be the best possible sort of bonus outcome of this company.
I like that. And I know that we only have like 15 minutes left. So I guess 17 minutes left. I can count. It's cool. We're going to get there. So we won't get to all the questions. And so, yes, I feel like we're going to have to do a deeper dive for content creators next time.
Yes.
I do think this is another like in between question because it's something that a company would be curious about, but then also content creators. JT asked, what does good candidate client look like? What should clients avoid? Is professional editing, intros, etc. required, or can seat of their pants podcast make sense for the client?
Okay, so if I understand that question correctly, and tell me if you're interpreting it differently, it's really what makes a good influencer. Do they have to be this like super perfect, organized kind of approach, or can it be more, ad hoc?
Yes, and I think it matters is there specific type of content that needs to be made? Because on like my live streams, they are a very like wing it. Like we have questions, but we have an overall theme, but then you have people that make very curated YouTube videos that are under 10 minutes that I'm just like, damn, that is really cool.
Yeah.
One day maybe I'll get there. Or you have somebody that's like really, really good at YouTube Shorts and TikTok.
Yes.
So, but again, those are a lot of times are very curated and very like edited. Very put together, where sometimes longer form content is much more like by the seat of your pants.
It depends with everything. It depends. So I would say the most high value influencer assets right now, and this may change as the market, I say recovers. The market's doing really well, but tech's still in this very nervous I would describe it as like nervous energy. And there's still things happening with companies and the games they're playing, as far as, resources. So right now, the best possible assets you could have are newsletters and LinkedIn followings. These are the ones we need more of. They perform the best both on impressions, how many eyeballs are you actually reaching, and click-throughs. And it's simply a part of just not only with newsletters, just how you actually consume the newsletter, being able to click immediately is part of that. LinkedIn also is incredibly friendly for long tail content. So this sort of evergreen content, things that are not happening right now. But they resurface things a lot. The algorithm is really friendly for that. And so that just generally performs really well. If you have a ton of followers on LinkedIn and are able to get reach there, that is also super high value. Right now, the least interesting, at least for our clients, that's not to say people aren't getting paid to make content in this way. But right now, I would put podcasts at the lowest. You're really going to see podcasts be around brand awareness versus really driving toward any kind of click-through rate or tracking in that way. And so it works in some ways, it doesn't in other ways. Some clients also have a little bit of an allergic reaction. Like there is a learning curve in tech with influencers in general, and it's really interesting to see everyone's comfort level. We're really, to our knowledge, the first folks who are focusing completely on tech, right? Obviously, influencer marketing is a well-established technique and has some massive companies, but you see this a lot in like fashion, cosmetics, direct to consumer type of products, when you can't go on Instagram without seeing, the Korean face mask or whatever that you need. And they get me to buy things way too much. So, but in tech, it's a little bit different. And some of the companies aren't totally bought in to that comfort level because they don't want to irritate the developer market by being too sort of salesy. And we understand this, right? Developer relations exists because developers are allergic to any kind of sales. And so it's really important that in our work, it's not about a sale. It's really about driving that awareness and that path toward more information. So here's the thing. We think it's great. If you think it might be useful, here's where you can learn more. That is really the gift of influencer marketing within tech. But yeah, there is a learning curve. And there's also just, some people don't realize how much sponsored content there is. And the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, actually has very strict rules on how you have to showcase that something is a partnership, a paid sponsorship, etc. We see a lot of folks kind of skirting around that. And we don't like that. Being on the up and up is also very, very important to both Forrest and myself. Being able to just say, this is a paid partnership. And there's no shame in that, right? We pay open source maintainers because their time is valuable and we appreciate that. And content creation is the exact same thing. And so I don't see a lot of pushback from developers in this. I think a lot of folks are appreciative that there's a market for people to actually make some side income. And some people actually get to quit their big jobs and do this full time. And that's incredible. I would love to be able to do that for folks. But yeah, I would say the companies still have some hesitations in certain mediums and assets.
Okay. And I think this is probably going to be the question that we end with, because I think this will lead in very well to a future conversation of what would be the best foundations for content creators in the spaces of amateur, established, and accomplished.
Say more.
This is a question from Damien, and the way I interpret this question is, you mentioned that like podcasts may not have the best traction, but newsletters and LinkedIn posts a lot of times do have higher traction. When people are starting to get into content creation, and this is going to be very different for amateurs, established and accomplished content creators,
Got it.
where would you get the foundations of what someone could do, should do, where they might want to post, what they might want to create content on?
Yeah. Okay, so I'll God, we only have 9 minutes. We're gonna need a follow-up. Becoming an influencer is a really interesting thing. And I think I ended up sort of accidentally building a pretty large Twitter following, just because I'm what I call jalapeno spicy, right? You want to be like spicy enough to be interesting, add a little interesting taste to it, but you don't want to be like ghost pepper hot, where you're just destroying people's taste buds. And I think I see a lot right now where people try to mimic folks who came up really fast and who have really large audiences, but are kind of assholes. I am not, and this is personal preference, right? This is about my value system. There's flavors for everyone and zero judgment. For me, I don't like working, nor do I enjoy consuming content from people that I believe are mean-spirited, who cut people down, who are, unnecessarily harsh. And that's not to say you can't ever be harsh. I have absolutely been harsh. I have absolutely made mistakes on Twitter. I 100%, like, none of us are perfect. And there's just a pattern I see right now where people are coming up and being as controversial as possible. I think it works because the zeitgeist right now is really controversial and polarizing, and that's what gets attention. I think the algorithms feed into this, but I also don't see that those influencers have 10-year, 20-year careers. I think they have a moment, and then they flame out. And if that works for some folks, awesome. That's not for me. And I don't think it works for a lot of people. Even this sort of, approach where, oh, I'm so perfect. And I'll pick on Ballerina Farms, since that has been a widespread story. And obviously I have a lot of feelings of that as a woman.
Is that the trad wife one?
Yes.
Okay.
She's like married to he's like the son of the guy who owns JetBlue or something. They live on a farm. They have like 8 children. Her videos are so much focused on, like, if you step one layer below what she's actually saying, it's really around this perfection, this perceived perfection of, here's my perfect life, here's my perfect children, here's my perfect meal, here's my perfect kitchen, here's my perfect everything. And I think it, again, just like the mean-spirited content, that works up to a point, right? Because we all have, I covet, I'll speak for myself. I was a power lifter. Then I had a child. My body is not the same as it used to be. And I covet a specific body type that is very cut up, and it's what I desire. And so I will look at that type of content and be excited, and kind of like, I'll follow it and try and learn how they're doing it. And, that's what feeds into my algorithm. That said, I don't feel bonded with those people. I don't trust those people. I don't feel like we share anything. It's this very, parasocial. They're over here. I know them. They don't know me. And it's very one-sided, and it's not in any way trustful, or even, like, dare I say, intimate. Like, there's some things where you can actually be real and authentic and showcase your humanity. And I think ultimately that's what makes the really long-term influencers, content creators, thought leaders. It's when you showcase your struggle. It's when you showcase your problems, your mistakes. That's the type of thing that we can actually bond to. These are the people that you feel like, oh, I I like them. I want to support them. I want to see them win. I trust them. And so, you know, when you're talking about building an audience and building content, I would just encourage everyone not to mimic things they see be successful, but really be true to themselves. It's the best sort of accidental strategy I took, which was I am myself on Twitter. It's not my whole self. Like I call it a bit of a Horcrux, right? Like it's a portion of me that lives publicly. There's obviously other parts to me. But it is very much me. I curse in real life. I have the mouth of a sailor. I am funny. I say things that aren't always wise. I am very mouthy and opinionated. And, you know, my daughter's hilarious. Like that is the sort of soul of my Twitter account. And I think people who really lean into that and are just themselves, that's how you find your audience. The people that resonate with you aren't going to resonate with me. And the people that resonate with me aren't always going to resonate with you. We all connect with different people for different reasons. And I would just encourage everyone to start from there. I think a lot of times people think like, oh, well, I'm not knowledgeable enough, or I'm not an expert yet, or I'm not good at whatever it is. Just get started and speak in your voice with your experience and your worldview. And that is what's going to carry you. You know, learn out loud, make mistakes, say you're sorry, have success, highlight other people. It's not about you. It's about how we all fit into this broader story and this broader community. That's where you shine. And so I know that's a little like, it feels tangential, but I think that is the heart of what actually makes successful content creators. It's not actually like necessarily what they're saying. It's who they are. It's the human aspect of them that people are able to connect with and follow and trust. And so start there.
Thank you. And yes, we'll have to have a follow-up on this because I'm like, I have so many more questions. I'm like, I wish we had more time.
I know.
I posted this a few times, y'all, of where to find the recording, and there'll be later on, I'll put in the transcript from this as well as like key questions that we asked. To leave everybody off, is there any piece of advice you could give the audience, either be for content creators or for business or all above, or just for a human, anything you'd like to leave the audience with?
Get started. I am going to run out of influencers to place with before I run out of companies willing to sponsor. And so I need to give you money. Please get started. And so, yeah, the best advice I would give right now is start a newsletter, cross post to other platforms, Twitter, LinkedIn, etc. The influencers that command the very highest prices sell it all as a package. You know, you're in my newsletter, you're on my podcast, you're doing this. We all don't have infinite amounts of time. And so do what you can, but having that one asset that is sort of like your leader in that way, I highly suggest a newsletter. And then making sure you're actually driving attention. And again, it's all about being authentic, you know, speak with your voice.
And just as a heads up, y'all, the link to Freeman Forrest is on the site that I sent out. So it's down at the bottom, as well as where to follow Emily. And thank you all for joining us today.
Yes.
We will schedule the next one and send it out. So thank you all. Have a wonderful rest of your day.